Hi, I'm Anna, and this is the R5 Leather Workshop. Today we're going to be making coasters. This is a great first project for any novice leather crafter because it teaches you many of the basic, simple skills that you will need moving forward. We're also going to introduce some basic understanding of leather, as well as some basic tools you're going to need for this project. Before we get started, you need to have some understanding of the leather that you'll be purchasing. Full grain leather is the highest quality leather that you can buy. It includes all of the natural grain of the leather and is the very top of the hide. Next is top grain leather. Top grain leather includes the natural grain sanded away and then is given a consistent finish. This can be a smooth, clean finish, or like my weight here, it can be a pattern onto the leather. Next is suede. Suede is made from the inner splits of the leather and won't be used much here. Genuine leather is made from the layers that remain off the splits. The top layer uses plastic coat to give it that leathery looking finish. Lastly is bonded leather. This is the absolute lowest quality leather that you can buy. Scraps are bonded together, much like plywood. You often see bonded leather on Bibles. As you can see here from this Bible, that's my grandmother's, and it is basically falling apart, and you can tell that it's not really real leather. There are two different main tannages that you would be using. There's veg tan leather, which is always full or top grain. This one here is a full grain natural veg tan, and it can be dyed to your liking. Another thing to note about veg tan leathers is they age beautifully. They are also made using natural occurring compounds such as tannins, organic material like tree bark or vegetable matter. Next is chrome tan leather. Chrome tan leathers can also be made from full grain or are made from full grain and top grain leather. This is a much faster process than your veg tan leathers. The hides are tanned in acid, salts, and chromium sulfate, and from here they can be dyed in any variety of colors. You tend to see bright colored leathers are typically chrome tans. Now that you have a basic understanding of the leather you'll need to go shopping for, let's talk about the tools you're going to need for this project today. The first thing you're going to need is a straight edge ruler. When I first started leathercraft, I already owned these acrylic ones from all the sewing stuff I've done. These I really do love for leathercraft. However, they can slip a bit, and so they can be a little bit unruly. I still use these quite a lot, but probably when starting out, if you don't already own an acrylic one like I did, these metal cork-backed ones are amazing. Definitely get corked back. Just the metal, again, would be way too slippery. Look for corked-backed ones. I bought this one on Amazon. I will link it below. The next thing you're going to need is a rotary blade. There are multiple types out there. I personally really prefer this style because they don't tend to pop back as you're cutting. This style seems to, when you slice, it'll pop back on you. I don't prefer these. These are relatively cheap. I bought this one at Walmart. You can get them on Amazon as well. I also buy all my replacement blades on Amazon. They just have the best prices. The next thing you're going to need is an X-Acto knife. Number 2 is preferable. When I first started out, I was using number 1s. They are not really the best ones to use. Traditional X-Acto knives are actually quite light, but they do get the job done. I have since upgraded to this much nicer solid brass one, which I purchased from buckleguy.com. I absolutely love the heavy weight of it. I would highly recommend it to anyone who uses an X-Acto knife for anything, not just leathercraft. Next thing you're going to need is a scratch-awl. A scratch-awl is great for marking the leather where it needs to be cut. For example, with this piece, you would lay it down, use the scratch-awl, and it makes a line for you, so now you know where to cut, or when cutting out patterns, they allow you to know where to cut out as well. This scratch awl I purchased again from buckleguy.com. I absolutely love this one. It has the ability to replace the scratch needle part, but you can also find these very cheap on Amazon as well, and they'll get the job done just as easily. The next thing you're going to need is leather glue. This is from Tandy Leather. I really like this Eco Weld leather glue. Part of the reason that I like this is it doesn't have a toxic smell. A lot of leather crafters use barge and it has a terrible toxic smell, and I just don't like it. This stuff works great. You don't have to worry about opening a window. Probably my favorite stuff. Next thing you're going to need is some paintbrushes. I buy mine in cheap bulk packs from either Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Dollar Store. You're going to need these to put on the leather glue. The last thing you're going to need is a rotary mat. This is a really basic self-healing one. I bought this one at Hobby Lobby. You can find these all over the place. I would highly recommend getting the largest one you can find. This one is 24 inches by 36 inches. Now that you understand the basics, we can get started on making coasters. I've chosen here some bigger pieces from my scraps. This is a piece of chrome tan leather that has a milled look to it. And then the back side of this piece is going to be this other chrome tan leather that I have that is in this kind of sage green color. So I typically make my coasters 4 inches by 4 inches, which is why I'm going to use this acrylic tool, because it is perfectly 4 inches this way. One of the great things about these rotary mats is that you can use your ruler to line up against the line, so you always know that your edge is straight from top to bottom. Then you're going to get out your rotary tool. Make sure that your blade is sharp. Replace them as it seems to get hard to roll through the leather. So what I typically do is I've now cut a straight edge. Then I'm going to line up that straight edge against this line, and because this is 4 inches, I can now line up this against here. If you don't have a tool like this, you can do the same thing with this. You cut your first straight edge lining up to your mat, then go 4 inches across, and cut your piece. You now have 4 inches this way, so you just need to cut it this way now. Again, if you had something like mine, which is a perfect 4 inches, I'm going to line it up with the lines on my mat. Slice that edge off. Then I'm going to line it up again. Same thing, if you don't have one like I have, use your cork backed metal one. And now you have the bottom piece of your coaster, and we're going to repeat that process with the top piece. Something you'll learn as you use the rotary cutters and rulers more is there's always going to be a side you prefer to cut on. So always make sure you cut where you're comfortable. Trying to cut on the opposite side of where you're comfortable is always going to result in mistakes. Now that you have your two pieces of leather, you're just going to flip them over and you're going to apply your glue. This is a contact cement style glue. You're going to need to wait till it dries to a tacky feel before putting the two pieces together. Once your two leather pieces are dry to a tacky feeling, they're going to feel sticky, you can put them together. I always try to line them up as evenly as possible. But because leather does stretch and you can't always get them perfectly, I often will go back through and trim up my edges, which I'm going to do here. You can see where this didn't quite match up. The other option is you can cut out just a single piece, glue it directly on a piece that hasn't been cut yet, and then trim away the excess after. Now, if you want just a super simple coaster, you could technically call it done at this point, but we're gonna do a few little extra steps. The first thing we're gonna wanna do is curve off these edges. You don't really want the sharp edges, and having a little bit of a curved edge will make it look really nice. The easiest way to do that is to find something with a curve to it. Grab your scratch awl and just use it to create the curves. There are tools you can use to make this much easier, but when you're starting out and maybe you don't want to spend the money on a bunch of tools, this is really the nicest way to do this. And then you want to grab your X-Acto knife, and the way I like to cut these is I tend to do them in sections. I'll cut part of the curve and then continue. Now from here you really could be done. It has a nice curve to it. It's totally usable. That glue is very, very strong. It's not going to come apart, and you can just use it as a coaster. We're going to do a few extra little bits though here. Now for finishing up this project, you're going to need a few extra bonus items. These are not necessary for finishing this project. They're just going to give your project a little bit of extra pizzazz. This is a rag, tokonol, a burnishing tool, a refillable pen and die, and a file. I like these cheap files that you can buy at the dollar store. They get the job done great, and then when they're ruined, you can just chuck them out. So the first thing I'm going to do is get that file out, and I'm going to sand these edges down. This will just clean up everything. There are tools and machinery you can buy to do this, but when you're starting out, a file from the dollar store is really the way to go. So I've kind of cleaned that up a bit. It's not going to be perfect, but you just want to try to smooth out your edges there. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go back through with my leather dye. This is black. It's the best one to match the colors we have here. And I love these pens. They really do a great job of dyeing everything and keeping things neat and tidy. So now that that's completed, you can see it looks kind of nice. It gives it some nice edge look. The last thing you're going to want to do is seal this off. Now, if I was using veg tan, you could seal this off with just some water and some beeswax. I don't tend to ever do that. Even if I am using a veg tan, I tend to use tokonol. And the reason I like the tokonol is because it seals everything off, and it works for both chrome tan and your veg tan. So I always just use my finger and you just want to take it and rub it along the edge here. I usually try to get a pretty thick layer, and I tend to go all the way around first before I do anything else. And just get it in all the crevices. It also will seal off some of these edges, which is really nice. I find this also allows it to soak in if needed. Then I'll go through with a rag. Now you can from here polish this up with a rag if you like. This is not typically my preferred way to do this, but it is possible. But I typically use this burnishing tool. These are super cheap. You can find them at any leathercraft store and online. And all you're gonna do is just help polish this in. One thing I will say about a chrome tan versus a veg tan is chrome tans just don't seem to polish up no matter how hard you try, even with the Tokonol like a veg tan. Veg tans just polish up so much nicer. But regardless, there it's been partially burnished, and you just need to let the Tokonol dry up a bit, and these are now usable. In the next video, we're going to talk about stitching and how to hand stitch stuff like this, and we're going to add kind of a pretty stitching to this, but that'll have to wait till next week. And again, these are usable as is.